Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ninth installment of the Russian Revolution series. And this time, I believe there's not going to be any technical error, hopefully, and that we can continue with our discussion in one single flow. Right. So, today's topic is going to be a little intense, it's going to be a little technical, right? And my hope is that you follow whatever is being discussed right now, and of course if in case it is not clear, you can always reach out to me and I shall be more than happy to address any queries that you may have. Today we would be discussing a pretty wholesome topic, and that is the February Revolution in Petrograd. As always, before we get into the revolution itself, let us look at the backdrop of 1917, right? So if you realize that by 1916, in the previous installment that we had seen, things had become horrible in Russia. By 1917, of course, they did not clearly get any better. So the condition, in particular in Petrograd, if you remember, was the renamed version of St. Petersburg, right? So the conditions in Petrograd, the conditions in Petrograd specifically were really grim. They were really serious, okay? And if you look at the layout of the city of Petrograd itself in 1917, right, you will realize that the layout of the city, the layout of the city was designed in such a way that it reinforced or brought to light the social divisions that existed between the different classes of people. It reinforced the social division that existed between the different classes of people. It is best explained using an actual chart. I'm not very good at drawing, but let's just understand what is happening. Say for example, this this rectangle is the city of Petrograd, right? If this is the city of Petrograd, there is a river that runs right in the middle. This diagonal over here is the river, and the river of the name is River Neva, right? It's Neva or Neva, I'm not really sure about the pronunciation, but let us just keep it as Neva, right? Now if the river is running through the center, you will realize that this becomes the left bank of the river, and this of course becomes the right bank of the river, right? The river has two banks, logical, right? Now on the right bank, you had all of your workers' quarters, slums, factories, etc. Basically the so-called lower part of the town, okay? And on the left bank, supposedly you had the more elite palaces, elite houses, residences. In fact, you even had the Winter Palace on the left bank, right? And you had all the official buildings and ministries, right? You had all the official buildings and ministries on the left bank of the river. So you can clearly see that the layout of the city was such that it was reinforcing the social divisions that existed between the people. Perfect. Now in 1917, you realize, now this year is important for us right now. Okay, the workers are going to be deeply affected by the food shortages that are happening across the country. You realize that by this point of time, the Russian Tsar is following some really dumb policies. He's using scorched earth policy. He's sending all the remaining food grains to the military. Basically, of course, very logically, it's going to lead to a shortage of food, right? Okay. Now, the workers are being really affected by the food shortages. Okay, and not to mention there is a severe winter once again. A classic situation. It has never helped the Tsar, and it is still not helping him. Okay, there is a severe winter. Whatever crops remain, they are also failing. So basically, there is nothing at home to eat. Okay, now we start with the journey. Okay, this particular journey is going to go all the way from the 22nd of February Okay, it is going to go all the way from the 22nd of February all the way until the 2nd of March 2000. What am I even saying? 1970, not 2017, 1917. All right. So it's going to go all the way from 22nd February 1917, for the love of God, all the way till the 2nd of March 1917, right? Let us see what happened one by one. Let us first check out the 22nd of Feb 2202, okay? Now on the 22nd of February, there was a lockout. There was a lockout that took place in one of the factories on the right bank of the city, okay? There was a lockout that took place in one of the factories on the right bank of the city. On the 23rd of February, in order to express solidarity with the workers who were caught in this lockout, who were caught in this shutdown of the factory, who were affected by this, 50 factories called a strike. Okay, of course, classic. 50 factories called a strike in sympathy and solidarity. Okay, in sympathy and solidarity with the workers who were affected because of this lockout on the 22nd of February. Okay, now in many factories, the best part over here is there is a feminist angle involved in it. In many of the factories, in these 50 factories, the strikes were led by women. Okay, in many of the factories, the strikes were led by the women workers, the women workforce, which is inspiring. Okay, which of course is super inspiring, right? So what they did on the 23rd itself is that all of these workers from the 50 factories, they marched to the right bank. Okay, they marched to the right bank and they went to the center of the capital and they staged a demonstration there. Okay, they staged a demonstration there, not demo, demonstration, right? So they went all the way from the right bank to the left of the left bank, and then they went essentially to the center of the capital and they staged a demonstration, right? Now this particular demonstration was held in a place that was known as the Navski Prospect. Okay, it was in a place that was called as the Navski Prospect, right? So this particular center of town was called by this cute little nickname. Okay, now that they are already in the elite, the so-called elite part of the city, these people, what they did, okay, they surrounded the government buildings, okay, in protest. They surrounded the government buildings and the so-called elite residences. Okay, they surrounded the government buildings and the so-called elite residences, right? And the government, basically the Tsar got really panicky, he got scared, he's like, what is happening to my city? And he imposes a curfew. Curfew basically means that if you are found roaming around the streets without prior permission, you will be shot to death. Pretty simple, right? So he imposes a curfew. Now the people get scared, so they are like, okay, chalo ghar chalte hain, let's go home. So because of this curfew, on this particular day, the demonstrators dispersed. Okay, on this particular day, the demonstrators dispersed. ठीक है. Now this is happening on the 23rd of February. Okay. Now on the 24th of February. Okay, on the 24th of February, what is going to happen is people are not going to stay quiet. The protesters are back on the street. Of course they are. They're back on the street to protest. The workers are back on the street to protest. right? Now the king is like, okay, I've had enough of these idiots. What he does is he brings out the cavalry, basically armed horsemen. Okay, he brings out the armed horsemen or the cavalry of his army, right, in order to keep a check. He doesn't tell them to kill the protesters. He just says keep a check on the workers, that they should not create unnecessary trouble for anybody, right? Okay, that day went off smoothly, didn't happen, nothing happened too much. Let's go to 25th of February. 25th of February, the Tsar finally decided to do something that he absolutely loves doing. He suspended the Duma. Okay, he suspended the Duma, and even the conservative politicians who usually supported him absolutely protested against this move. Okay, protested this weird move that the Tsar had played on them. So he suspended the Duma, and the conservative politicians who were otherwise very friendly with the Tsar, they used to have sandwiches with him and all that, now protested against the move. Okay, now let us come to the 26th and the 27th of this February month. Okay, let us come to the 26th and the 27th of this February month. Now you will realize that once this suspension had happened, a greater number of people, greater number of workers had come into protest on the streets. Okay, a greater number of workers had come into protest on the streets. Now the number of people who were protesting had increased, basically. Okay, more and more of them came in from the left bank all the way to the right bank of the river, basically from the so-called lower part of town to the so-called elite part of town. They just went completely berserk. Okay, they came in, they joined the demonstration, and they ransacked the police headquarters. Okay, and they ransacked the police HQ headquarters, right? And they raised their slogans, raised their voices about bread, give us food, give us equal wages, give us a parliament, give us democracy, allow us to vote, etc., etc. So they basically raised a lot of slogans, they raised a lot of chants regarding bread, wages, democracy, etc., etc. Now what the Tsar tries to do is, Tsar is like, "Bus, I have had enough." So what he does is he orders his cavalry to once again come into the picture and try to suppress the people. But this time, this plan backfired. Okay, he tried to bring in the cavalry again. But this time his plan backfired because the cavalry refused to shoot. Finally, they became one with the workers, and that is one of the most beautiful things over here. The cavalry refused to shoot on the workers. It is like a Bollywood moment, so to speak. Okay, cavalry refused to shoot on the workers, so much so that three regiments of the army mutinied, matlab rebelled. Okay, three regiments of the army mutinied or rebelled and joined the protesting workers. Beautiful scenes happening. People were hugging each other, people were crying, people were chanting. Can you imagine how powerful that would have been? Okay, and by the same evening, the soldiers and the workers got together. Okay, the soldiers and the workers got together to create the first council that in Russian was known as Soviet. This is where that word comes from. Okay, this is where that word comes from. Okay, So this is where the word Soviet comes from, okay? And this first Soviet, since it was established in the city of Petrograd, it was called the Petrograd Soviet, okay? Since it was established in the city of Petrograd, it was known as the Petrograd Soviet. Right. Now, you will realize that once this Soviet was formed, there was really no way out for the Tsar to escape, because he realized that his own army has rebelled against him. Workers in any case hated him. Soldiers are now hating him. He has no means of escaping. So finally, on the 2nd of March, the Tsar's military commanders went to the Tsar and told him, listen, bro, you really do not have a way out of this. It is time for you to leave your throne. And the Tsar, for God knows how, he finally decided to abdicate. Abdication का मतलब होता है he left his throne. He declared the death of the monarchy on 2nd of March 1917. Right? He abdicated on the 2nd of March 1917. And once the Tsar abdicated, the Soviet leaders, who were basically the workers and the soldiers, okay, WNS लिखा है मैंने, they were workers and the soldiers, plus the Duma leaders who had been poor people who had been suspended. These two got together in order to create the first provisional government. In order to create the first actual provisional government of Russia, it was called the Provisional Government. Now, this provisional government was apparently going to decide the future of Russia. Okay, it would decide the future of Russia by further creating a constituent assembly, blah blah blah, right? Like they had originally envisioned, right? Now, this constituent assembly was to be elected on the basis of universal adult suffrage. Basically, it means that voting rights shall be given to all for the first time ever. Right? ठीक है. So basically, in essence, what has happened is that Petrograd had brought the February Revolution. Okay, Petrograd had brought the February Revolution of 1917, which led to the death of the monarchy. And this is where we end the Petrograd Revolution or the February Revolution of 1917. I genuinely hope that it made some sense. Please have a look at it again in case it did not, and do write to me in case there is any confusion. And until I meet you all next time, take care, stay safe, and all the best. Bye.